Well, everyone has their own definition of what energy transition means. Some people would argue that it's more renewables, or it's the elimination of the fossil fuel industry, or it's more batteries, or it's more this or that or the other thing, and those are all tactics. The real issue around sustainability is how do we make more energy with less CO2 emissions? That's the key. That's the ball that we need to keep our eye on. And if we're able to do that effectively, what that suggests is we're going to need everything. We've got a little over 7 billion people in the world today, and by 2050 we'll be approaching 10 billion people. That's a remarkable amount of additional population, and most of that population will be added in places in the world that today are already in some state of energy poverty. Those places in the world will have to make use of the best available and the best affordable fuels and feedstocks that are available. And that's largely going to drive places like China, India, etc. They're going to use coal, they're going to use natural gas, they're going to use oil, the hydrocarbons that fuels today's energy needs, which by the way are about 80% of the world's energy comes from fossil fuel. But when we add all these other people, we're also going to be adding our energy demand in a big way. We will be nearly doubling the volume of energy that the world will consume. And so by definition that says we will have to have a lot of renewables, a lot of wind and solar and biofuels, do the best we can with nuclear and try to advance that. It's really all of the above. But with all that being said, by 2050, the projections are that the world's energy demand will still be 80% hydrocarbons. Now, that means the world's amount of energy consumed will be tremendously larger, and there'll be a tremendous amount of renewables installed, but at the same time, to meet that expanded demand, we'll still need to use hydrocarbons and fossil fuels. That's why, to do it sustainably, we have to deploy the kind of transformative technologies that we spoke about today in terms of decarbonizing, because if we don't, it's not sustainable. But first and foremost, you have to have available and reliable energy. If you do, it's got to be affordable. And if you meet those two tests, the third thing that's then essential is environmental responsibility. That's the definition of sustainability. Not simply an environmental term, but the ability to meet all three of those requirements. If you do, it's really sustainable. And if you don't, you're putting your thumb on the scale and making one thing more important than another. And that's tricky, because that can get you into an environmental problem, it can get you into a cost problem, it can actually get you into an availability problem. Great example of that, look at Ukraine. Look at Western Europe right now as they get ready for the long, cold winter and the inaccessibility of Russian gas to provide to them. And that puts things right at the edge of really the sharp edge of the decision making. Who cares about your carbon footprint if you don't even have anything to warm your house? And so that's the issue that many people in the world are faced with, and that's why I think we've got a responsibility here in this country to advance the technology. Well, ever since I was a young boy, I've seen an enormous amount of technology transformation in this country. It's the next new thing. It's the next exciting change. It's all of the things that industry and science and technology have brought to bear, and in many ways changed our lives dramatically, right? And so here we are today with the expectation that more of that magic is coming. We put another challenge out there and we suggest that this is what we want. This is where we'd like to go. And two things have happened. One, we've met a lot of those challenges over the last 50 years in a remarkable way. But the other thing that's happened in today's world is we expect things to happen even faster. We want instant gratification. We want it to change right now. And that's going to be a real challenge also in the energy value chain, because there's very complex issues to be solved, a lot of capital that needs to be invested, big bets need to be made on infrastructure, et cetera, to solve the problem. And so, that's really what I'm talking about, is that people want to see it and they want it now. And that's going to be a challenge. That's a tough needle to thread. But the industries, I think, are committed to it because their shareholders are telling them that's what they want. But these same shareholders are going to quarterly meetings and asking about what was the profitability last quarter. So don't get confused that everyone's ready to have their share value devalued because of this. They want to see the accretive path forward. And that might be economic, it could also be social, it could be a combination of both. And the companies that are going to be sustainable will be the ones that can do it. And the ones that aren't going to be sustainable, they're either going to be followers or they get lost by the crowd. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely exciting, because as I said, industries are not doing what we're talking about today at this event because of government requirements. They're doing it because of their shareholders, the marketplace, the demands that people are putting out there going forward, and their ability to meet those demands and capture competitive alternative and competitive advantage, so that as they go forward, they'll be continued to view as a leader in the industry, continue to be viewed as the preferred choice, the compelling choice for whether it's plastics or fuels or any of the manufactured products that we have. So what are we doing in the Houston area? We're advancing carbon capture, utilization, and storage in a big way. We're advancing the hydrogen economy in a big way, which will go a long way toward decarbonizing fuel systems and fuel headers. We're moving in the electric vehicle area, that's for sure. We're moving in hydrogen vehicles, that's also important. But the other thing that's really going to be important to make all this work as we move into the world that electrification is going to demand a tremendous amount of additional electricity, we need base load power that's decarbonized. That's not a value proposition that exists anywhere except the nuclear industry. I'm not convinced that the nuclear industry is right around the corner from a rendezvous with the future. I don't think that's going to happen. I think people are still concerned about it. But what they understand is there's gas, there's coal, there's a lot of the resources that we have here in this state that if we deploy carbon capture, utilization, and storage, if we do carbon capture, utilization, and storage with natural gas reformed hydrogen, we can do fuel substitution in a big way. It's all about getting back to the point that I made earlier. It's lowering emissions. That's the ball. And if we keep our eye on that ball, we won't get confused. And I believe these industries see that very clearly and are advancing, using a lot of their own capabilities and a lot of their own know-how and knowledge to meet those expectations. If you don't, you'll end up in the dust. Yeah, it's essential. These kinds of events are essential for people to network and hear and know what's going on, but to also recognize that there are different points of view, and I'm not going to suggest that there's any right or wrong, but I think people can begin to understand where real knowledge can come from. Not just an article in the paper or somebody's opinion piece that they've penned in the local newspaper or a magazine article, but to come here and talk to people that are really in the industry, that really know what's going on, that are making real investments. That's the reality of an event like this, which is nothing but healthy. And the more of this that we can do and convene, the better off we're going to be. And I think it's great, not only here in the Houston area, but also all of the Gulf Coast. We have a lot of commonalities with Corpus and the Golden Triangle and even out in West Texas. And I think as Texas is looked at as a global provider of energy, and we often tell the world with no shame at all that we're the energy capital of the world, I think a lot of the places in the world also want to hear that we're leading the way in the energy transition. And I believe we are. The energy transition doesn't mean throwing everything out that we're doing to go to something new. It means transforming the ability to meet those global energy demands and do it sustainably.